Breaking news: Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan's unplanned kiss breaks the internet. The city lights outside the rehearsal hall flickered like a heartbeat, casting faint glimmers on the rain-slick pavement. Inside, the air was heavy with the echoes of laughter, music, and the low murmur of a crew wrapping up a long day. Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo had been practicing for hours, their chemistry on stage undeniable, but no one, not even them, expected the night to turn into the moment that would set the internet ablaze. The storm had rolled in without warning. A sudden downpour drenched the streets, trapping the cast and crew inside. Wang Yibo leaned against the doorway, his hair slightly damp, his breath misting in the cool night air. Xiao Zhan approached quietly, his voice soft but teasing. "You always look like you belong in the rain," Xiao Zhan said, a grin tugging at his lips. Yibo smirked, but his eyes held a flicker of something deeper. "Maybe I've been waiting for someone to notice." A sudden clap of thunder cut through their banter, shaking the windows. The power flickered, and then silence. The room plunged into darkness except for the faint glow of streetlights filtering through the rain-streaked glass. A collective gasp rose from the crew, but it was followed by laughter and the scuffle of footsteps as people searched for candles and phone flashlights. In the confusion, Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo found themselves alone near the doorway. The rain outside had become a curtain, separating them from the world. "You're shaking," Xiao Zhan observed, his voice nearly drowned out by the storm. "It's nothing," Yibo replied, though his voice was rougher now, a little too vulnerable. Another flash of lightning lit the room for a heartbeat, and in that brief, bright moment, Xiao Zhan saw the exhaustion in Yibo's eyes, the same eyes that had been a safe harbor for him so many times before. Instinctively, Xiao Zhan reached out, his fingers brushing Yibo's sleeve. The touch was small, almost imperceptible, but for Yibo, it felt like a lifeline. He turned toward Xiao Zhan, the storm casting shadows across his face. The music playing faintly in the background, left on by a forgotten phone, swelled for just a moment. A gentle, soulful melody filled the empty space, and Yibo's lips curved into a bittersweet smile. "You always do this," Yibo whispered. "Do what?" Xiao Zhan asked. "Save me without realizing it." The room seemed to shrink around them, the outside world fading away. They stood so close now that the scent of rain clung to their clothes, and the warmth of Xiao Zhan's hand on Yibo's arm was impossible to ignore. And then, without planning, without hesitation, it happened. Yibo leaned in, not with the confidence of a performer used to cameras, but with the quiet desperation of someone who could no longer hold back. Xiao Zhan's breath caught, but he didn't pull away. The distance between them dissolved like mist under sunlight. Their lips met in a kiss that was raw, unguarded, and heartbreakingly tender. It wasn't dramatic or choreographed. It wasn't for show. It was an unplanned, unfiltered moment, two souls colliding under the weight of years of unspoken feelings. Outside, lightning illuminated the rain like falling diamonds, as if the universe itself was applauding. Inside, the world seemed to hold its breath. Unbeknownst to them, a crew member had returned for a forgotten jacket. The soft glow of a phone screen lit up the corner of the room and caught everything. The video hit social media before the storm even cleared. By the time the sun rose, hashtags were trending worldwide, #IboJonKiss, #ForeverMine, #Caught in the Rain. Millions watched the grainy clip of two silhouettes locked in a kiss, the rain dancing behind them. The video was shaky, imperfect, and utterly captivating. Fans were in tears. Some screamed in disbelief. Others whispered that they had always known. But no one could deny the emotion radiating from that single stolen moment. Comments flooded in. "Years of chemistry, and this is the proof we didn't know we needed. They didn't even notice the camera, that's how real it was. This is more than a kiss. This is love breaking free." As the clip spread, media outlets scrambled for statements. Paparazzi camped outside studios. Yet, for hours, neither Wang Yibo nor Xiao Zhan said a word. Instead, they disappeared. Rumors swirled that they had driven out of the city, seeking refuge somewhere far from flashing cameras and trending hashtags. Photos later emerged, blurry shots of their car parked on a hill overlooking the sea. Fans speculated endlessly, but the truth was simpler and more profound: they just needed to breathe. On that hilltop, With the ocean roaring below, Yibo stood quietly, his hands shoved in his pockets. Xiao Zhan joined him, his hair tousled by the salty wind. For a long moment, they said nothing. Finally, Yibo spoke. "Do you regret it?" Xiao Zhan didn't answer immediately. He stepped closer, his gaze soft but unwavering. "No," he said. "I regret waiting this long." Yibo's lips trembled, whether from the cold or emotion, even he wasn't sure. Xiao Zhan reached for his hand, threading their fingers together. "They're going to talk," Yibo murmured. "Let them," Xiao Zhan replied, squeezing his hand. "For once, we don't have to hide." The stars blinked above them, indifferent to the chaos unraveling online. In that quiet, wind-swept moment, it was just the two of them, the storm, the kiss, and the promise of a new beginning. As dawn painted the sky in soft pinks and golds, a single message appeared on Yibo's private account, a post that fans would screenshot 1,000 times before it vanished. Some things aren't meant to be secrets forever. The internet erupted again, but by then, Yibo and Xiao Zhan were gone, driving down the coast, the weight of years finally lifted, the road stretching out before them like a promise. And somewhere in the quiet hum of the car's engine and the rhythm of rain on the windshield, Yibo whispered the words he had written 100 times but never spoken aloud. "Forever mine." The rain had stopped hours ago, but its scent lingered on the pavement like a memory that refused to fade. In a corner cafe on the outskirts of the city, the windows fogged with warmth, two figures sat across from each other in silence. The world outside was in chaos, hashtags trending, news alerts flashing, fandoms split in every direction, but inside, Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan were just two men with damp hair, steaming mugs, and a secret that was no longer theirs alone. Xiao Zhan traced the rim of his cup with his fingertip, eyes lowered, the weight of the night settling into his chest. Yibo watched him quietly, his own emotions a storm he could barely name. Every vibration of his phone on the table reminded him of reality clawing its way back in. "They're not going to let this go," Yibo said finally, his voice soft but steady. "I know," Xiao Zhan replied, lifting his gaze. His eyes were red-rimmed, not from regret, but from the rawness of it all. "But maybe we shouldn't either." The hum of the espresso machine was the only sound for a moment. Then Yibo reached across the table, fingers brushing Xiao Zhan's knuckles. It was a small, almost imperceptible gesture, but in that quiet cafe, it felt monumental. The tension melted just enough for a smile, brief but real, to flicker on Xiao Zhan's lips. Back in the city, the clip of their kiss had become the most watched video of the year within hours. News outlets analyzed every frame, fans slowed the video down to catch the tremor in Yibo's hands as he reached for Xiao Zhan's arm, or the split-second gasp before their lips met. Theories flooded comment sections. Was it scripted? A PR stunt? A slip of genuine emotion? The grainy, imperfect quality of the video only made it feel more authentic. Meanwhile, the cafe door opened with a jingle, letting in a rush of cold air. A young barista peeked over the counter, her eyes widening as she recognized them. She said nothing, but Yibo caught her glance. A silent understanding passed between them. This moment was fragile, precious, and not for the world outside. She turned away, leaving them their privacy. Xiao Zhan's phone buzzed again, messages from his management, from Tan Songyun, from friends he hadn't heard from in months. He ignored them all, focusing on the man in front of him. "Do you remember," he said softly, "that rooftop after the awards show, when you said the city lights looked like fallen stars?" Yibo nodded, a hint of a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I said they reminded me of you." The memory wrapped around them like a blanket, comforting and bittersweet. It was the kind of recollection that could undo years of careful distance. Hours later, they slipped out of the cafe through a side door, avoiding the growing throng of reporters already circling the neighborhood. They drove without a destination, the city giving way to winding coastal roads. The moon cast silver paths across the water, and for the first time since the kiss, they laughed, quiet, disbelieving laughter that bubbled up and filled the car. At a cliffside overlook, they stopped. The sea below roared like applause, waves crashing against jagged rocks. Xiao Zhan leaned against the hood of the car, the wind tugging at his jacket. Yibo stood beside him, silent for a long moment before pulling something from his pocket, a crumpled scrap of paper, edges damp from the rain. I wrote this weeks ago, Yibo admitted, handing it over. Never thought you'd read it. Xiao Zhan unfolded the note with trembling fingers. The words were few but powerful. If I ever find the courage, I'll tell you under the rain. Xiao Zhan's breath hitched. You did. Yibo's laugh was low, almost shy. Guess I kept my promise. A flash of headlights from a passing car reminded them that the world was still spinning, that they couldn't hide on a cliff forever. But for now, the universe felt narrowed to the sound of waves and the warmth of shoulders brushing. Far away, social media had evolved into a battlefield of opinions. Some praised their courage. Others speculated wildly. A few criticized. But the overwhelming sentiment was, or millions of strangers watching two people risk everything for a moment of truth. By dawn, the first headlines appeared, the kiss that changed everything. Editorials dissected what it meant for their careers, for their fandoms, for the industry itself. Yet, no one could capture the quiet tenderness of the cafe, the weight of a crumpled note, or the way Yibo's hand had found Xiao Zhan's without hesitation. As the sun broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of rose and gold, Yibo took Xiao Zhan's hand again. We can face it, he said, his voice steadier now. We've faced worse. Xiao Zhan studied his profile in the early light, the set of his jaw, the softness in his eyes. He squeezed Yibo's hand in silent agreement. They drove back toward the city, ready or not, the road stretching ahead like a promise neither of them intended to break. Somewhere between the crashing waves and the rising sun, the fear began to fade, replaced by something fiercer, brighter, something that had waited years to bloom. By the time they reached the outskirts of the city, a single notification lit Yibo's phone, a new trending hashtag, #ForeverUnderTheRain, and a fan-made montage of their years together, set to a song that was once just another performance but now felt like prophecy. Yibo chuckled softly, glancing at Xiao Zhan. They already know, he said. They always did, Xiao Zhan replied. And as the city skyline came into view, the world might have been watching, but for them, it was just another beginning. By the time they reached Yibo's apartment, the city was already awake with whispers. Flashbulbs popped like firecrackers outside, echoing in the stairwell as they climbed 2 steps at a time, adrenaline still thrumming through their veins. Inside, the familiar space felt both comforting and alien, as if the walls themselves understood something had shifted. Xiao Zhan dropped his soaked jacket onto the couch, his fingers trembling slightly. Yibo noticed but didn't comment. Instead, he moved to the kitchen, flicking on the soft yellow light. You're freezing, he said quietly. Tea? Xiao Zhan nodded, but his mind wasn't on the tea. It was replaying the kiss again and again, the way Yibo's breath had caught, the shocked gasp from the crowd, the electric silence afterward. It had been unplanned, unguarded, undeniably real. Outside, social media had evolved from chaos into frenzy. Fans were dissecting every millisecond of the video. Others were already crafting fan art, edits, and theories that spiraled deeper with every repost. Some comments were vicious, but most were awash with awe. This wasn't PR. You can't fake that kind of emotion. I've been a fan for years, and I've never seen anything this raw. They didn't plan it. That's what makes it perfect. The kettle whistled. Yibo poured the water, his movements deliberate, almost meditative. He handed Xiao Zhan a steaming mug, their fingers brushing. The touch was small, fleeting, but it was enough to make Xiao Zhan's heart stutter. Yibo sat opposite him at the kitchen table, the mug warming his hands. He studied Xiao Zhan for a moment before speaking. I didn't mean to make things harder for you. Xiao Zhan looked up, his gaze steady. You didn't. It was going to happen one day. Maybe not like that, maybe not tonight, but you didn't make it harder. You made it honest. The weight of his words settled between them, fragile and precious. Somewhere across town, Tan Songyun stared at her phone, the video looping endlessly on her screen. She wasn't shocked, not really. She had seen the unspoken connection between them for years, in the way Yibo's eyes softened when Xiao Zhan walked into a room or the way Xiao Zhan's laugh became just a little freer when Yibo was near. Still, watching the world discover their secret was something else entirely. She typed a message, paused, deleted it. What could she say that wouldn't sound hollow? In the end, She sent only 3 words, "I'm proud of you." Back in the apartment, Yibo's phone buzzed with the message. He smiled faintly, holding it up for Xiao Zhan to see. She gets it. Xiao Zhan exhaled, some of the tension easing from his shoulders. Of course she does. The night stretched on. They talked in quiet voices, sometimes trailing into comfortable silence. Every so often, a headline notification would light up Yibo's screen, offers for interviews, urgent messages from management, but he ignored them all. Tonight, they were just Yibo and Xiao Zhan, 2 people who had shared something extraordinary under a rain-slicked sky. As dawn broke, the apartment filled with a gentle grey light. Xiao Zhan stood by the window, watching the sun paint the city's rooftops. Yibo joined him, slipping an arm around his waist. The gesture was instinctive, like breathing. "They're going to ask questions," Yibo murmured. "I know. They'll try to twist it. I know that too." Yibo tightened his hold just slightly. "But I don't regret it." Xiao Zhan turned to face him, the morning light catching the faint trace of a smile on his lips. "Neither do I." Across the city, fans gathered outside their agencies, holding handmade banners and singing softly. A group of them projected the video onto a building wall, a silent declaration that what they had witnessed was something beautiful, not scandalous. The world could debate, dissect, and doubt, but to them, that kiss was a promise. By mid-morning, statements began to circulate, carefully worded, cautious. Their management teams scrambled to control the narrative, but the public had already decided, this wasn't a stunt. It was real. In a small park where the cherry blossoms had just begun to bloom, a pair of fans stood beneath the trees, holding hands. "It's like watching a movie," one whispered. "No," the other replied, eyes bright. "It's better. Movies end. This feels like it's just starting." Back at Yibo's apartment, the quiet between them was no longer uncertain, it was comforting. Xiao Zhan stretched out on the couch, the weight of exhaustion settling over him. Yibo watched him for a long moment before pulling a blanket over his shoulders. Xiao Zhan opened his eyes slightly, catching the tenderness in Yibo's gesture. "You're staring," he teased softly. "Maybe I am," Yibo replied, a hint of a smirk on his lips. "What are you going to do about it?" Xiao Zhan chuckled, a sound that filled the room like sunlight. "Guess I'll let you." Their laughter was quiet but full, like the sound of a storm finally passing. Somewhere, a notification chimed again, another headline, another flurry of speculation. But for now, the noise of the world was distant, unimportant. What mattered was the warmth of the blanket, the steam curling from the forgotten mugs of tea, and the unspoken understanding that something irreversible had happened, and neither of them would have it any other way. Yibo reached for his guitar, fingers idly plucking a melody. It was soft, haunting, a tune he'd never played for anyone else. Xiao Zhan listened, eyes closing as the notes wove around them. "It's beautiful," he murmured. "It's us," Yibo replied quietly. The melody lingered, wrapping the room in something fragile and infinite. Outside, the city buzzed with speculation, but inside, 2 hearts beat in sync, a rhythm that had always been theirs. And somewhere deep inside, they both knew, the kiss wasn't an ending. It was a beginning, one that neither headlines nor hashtags could ever truly capture.